Delighted.
Okay. Good evening and welcome to the Wiltshire Business Club monthly chat. And I'm delighted today to be talking to Jay Saunders of Micromedia. Good evening, sir.
Good evening. Thanks very much for having me.
Oh, you're more than welcome. Now, how did you learn about the Wiltshire Business Club?
Moved back to Wiltshire about 18 months, 2 years ago, when I inherited my father's club, and that's my father's home. And that's when I really was then going to go for building Micromedia. So obviously did a load of research, and of course, given the game I'm in, I was checking all the way around Facebook and found the Wiltshire Business Club. My wife is also a member of it with Just So Jane. So it's just proven to be a great place to be, and I've made a number of contacts that have given me some great advice for getting started.
Yeah, they're very friendly and very helpful, and there's such a range of expertise, isn't there?
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, I've been chatting a great deal with Barbara Leatham with her photography thing, also her being ex-services as well. Yeah. She's been an invaluable source of advice and price point advice, etc.
Brilliant. Right, okay, now you're involved in, as you say, starting your own business, and basically, what's your background?
I've been in the Royal Navy for the last 20 years. Prior to that, I was a print journalist working for Future Publishing, for those that remember, over in Bath. I was working on their computer magazines. Left that, became a Royal Naval officer, and I've ended up developing 3 key skill sets, being that of a trainer, so training design and training delivery. That's been my principal job. Operational planning, so the way we actually plan for operations within the military, and finally media operations, which is the way that the military uses the media to gain effects they want to go forward with. I was the second in command, the executive officer of the Defence Media Operations Centre, and myself and the colonel I was working with completely reinvented the way we did media operations, and I'm now taking that into the civilian sector, because I've tried it on a couple of case studies, did some stuff with my father-in-law that used to run a DIY store in Salisbury, T Tools, and we could see that it actually does apply to the business space as well as it does to the military space.
Yeah. Now I've got my 3 islands in mind.
Yeah.
And we'll come to that later. So we covered the first base and where you're coming from. Now, about Micromedia, what services do you provide and to whom?
It's right. If you look at the point of every business, whenever they're trying to gain effects, we'll think about 3 stovepipes, those of marketing, advertising, and public relations. Okay. What I discovered with the military is the British public would quite rightly complain if the British military was spending a lot of money on advertising and marketing. Yep. So they approach the media in a completely different way. They form professional relationships with all forms of media channels, be it new media, traditional media, and what have you, to actually try and generate their effects. And I'm bringing that to the marketplace of, right, you may want to supplement, or in fact, if you're restricted in your income, want to use a media approach to communications to start influencing the audiences that matter to you to generate the effects that you want.
Right, so having defined your audience, you want to be able to reach out to it?
Absolutely, and that will be, the services I will offer is predominantly in the training field, showing people how you can use a media approach, various tools, crisis management, crisis communications, but equally I can move into generating things like intros and outros to professionalize the look of your YouTube and Twitter video channels. I can also help with media planning, forming the right plan that's going to work for your business based on the military approach to campaigning, to find out what your center of gravity is, what the center of gravity of your customer base is, and the center of gravity of your competitors. So you know exactly what messages are going to fit with your audiences via which channels.
Yeah, I mean, most people use a scattergun approach, don't they? They sort of post on Twitter today, they're on Facebook tomorrow, they do a YouTube video, and then say, well, nobody hears me. So a plan's important.
A plan, to me, is absolutely essential, because if you want to generate effect, you've got to be following that plan and you've got to set the right identities. One of the biggest, what I would say, is flaws I've seen so many people do is put out the exact same content on every one of their social media channels. Well, if they're following you on multiple channels, they're getting the same message over and over again. The people looking at Twitter want to see something different they will see on Facebook than they would see on Google Plus, than they would see on YouTube, than they would see on SoundCloud, and such as this, you know, in Firewire. You want to hear far more in detail stuff. So you've got to be able to take your key center of gravity and then adapt it so it will feed the audience that's actually watching that particular channel.
Right. Okay. I understand that. So basically, you've got a plan, but you mentioned. I mean, I'm just listening to your radio or your podcast. How do you get into podcasting?
It's something I've been a fan with. I experimented a while ago by running a small comedy podcast, because one of my hobbies is I'm a playwright. So I made a comedy podcast with it and really, really enjoyed it. But what I found was a lot of people think that podcasts and blogs are dying mediums, but actually they are absolutely fantastic for generating a huge amount of reach. And I've ended up talking to some podcasters, to other people that blogs, and we've ended up going into collaboration to share our audiences. And that is a massive way to actually reach out to more people.
Yeah. I mean, for our audience, could you describe simply what a podcast is?
Podcast is essentially an audio show that you can get on demand from various platforms. Obviously, the biggest one out there at the moment is iTunes. I haven't yet connected mine into iTunes, but if you use applications like Stitcher or SoundCloud, you can record yourself your own radio show, just edit it simply, put it up there with the correct RSS feeds, which sounds very technical and it's not, and it can be syndicated across several different platforms. So you can access my podcast via Stitcher, Deezer, TuneIn, what have you. You don't have to be stuck to one thing, but it's your chance to give an audio product of your own design, purely focusing on what you're interested in.
Yeah, I mean, there are several advantages to audio only, aren't there?
Absolutely. The production time is so much smaller than trying to do something on video. If you're trying to make a video, as you can see with this, my webcam is slowly moving out of focus, and I'm doing a bit of a civil shepherd with the old Vaseline around the lens. But with audio, all you need is a half decent quality USB microphone, a free application called Audacity, which I couldn't recommend highly enough, and you can edit through your sound, get rid of all those background pops and what have you, and there you are. You've got a professional sounding, high quality audio product that people can access when they want.
And it's sometimes, for some people, a lot easier to do a podcast than write a blog.
Absolutely, absolutely. Some people are just naturally gifted in the way that they can speak directly off the cuff and convey their messages, rather than worrying about, have I got the grammar right? Have I got the fonts right? Have I actually blocked it in the right space? Have I got a picture in the right place? It's just you. It's just your voice. Maybe, as you've seen with my podcast, all I've done is I put a little loop at the beginning and the end of it, a little piece of music that brands it and gives it that professional edge.
Yep, indeed. And of course, we're now venturing into video, as we are tonight.
We are. If I can get myself back into focus again.
Okay.
There we go. We're back in again.
Right. Okay. Yeah. I mean, video, because you mentioned it on your website, is video is becoming increasingly important.
And the first piece of advice I would give to any business these days, and it's what I had to, even when I go back to talk about my father-in-law's case, there are 3 places you have to be. You absolutely have to be. You have to be on the web. That means you need to have a website, because it gives people the confidence that you are a stable business. That means you're with Google, and if you've registered yourself with a Google Plus page, that's instantly, forget about going through search engine optimization. If you're a registered page with Google Plus, bang, your hit comes up so much higher on a right-hand panel. They love that part. Second place you need to be is Facebook. I have a love-hate affair with Facebook, because they're constantly changing their algorithms. So trying to get your content out to your customers and your audiences becomes more difficult, but you have to be there. And don't ever forget the second largest search engine in the world, YouTube. It is the second largest search engine out there. If you're not there, you're missing such a potential audience, but you've got to work out what you want to achieve in that particular channel. Yeah,
you've got to get the message right, haven't you?
Absolutely.
It's got to be different for different audiences on the different channels.
Absolutely. I mean, don't think you're going to turn into Zoella overnight and suddenly have 1.4 million subscribers and you'll be a multi-millionaire in a couple of weeks. probably what the vast majority of us in the Wiltshire Business Club are actually dealing with is quite niche. And I don't really care about the number of followers I get. It's the quality of the followers that I want to go. And that's the key. You can spend, there are some outrageous companies out there that will sell you 40,000 Twitter followers.
Yep.
Brilliant. Fantastic. What's that do? I've got 40,000 fake followers there for me. Yeah. How is that actually going to generate the effect that I want? I'd sooner have 10 followers that are really interested in what I do and then come to me for advice and consultancy.
Yeah, it's listeners, isn't it? People who are watching and listening to what you do. They're the ones you want to get to.
And this is one of the things I'm bringing from the military, because we always look at the media in three fashions: your measures of activity, your measures of performance, and then most importantly, your measures of effect. If you're trying to communicate without having an effect, not knowing what it is, you're going to miss it because you haven't set it. Followers are nothing more than measures of performance. You could have 40,000 followers, hurrah. But if you're not increasing sales, you've not generated an effect. So that's why the media plan becomes so important. So you can target your activity, measure that performance, but you're always driving for that effect. And that's why I would say to everyone, a media plan is essential.
Indeed. I mean, you had to have, going back to the Royal Navy, you had to have a plan to deal with things like the Ebola situation.
Absolutely. That was, without question, one of the most traumatic times I've ever done in my service. I mean, here I am, a naval officer. I'm used to standing on bridges and engine spaces and what have you, and I find myself in the most remote district of Sierra Leone, a place called Kono, somewhere very, very dear to my heart now, where you're losing 30 to 40 people a week from the Ebola virus. And how are you protecting yourself? How are you protecting the community? How are you protecting your men? I had to sit down and plan every contingency. Another one that is really valid for all of our members as well is planning for crisis. Don't think you're going to be able to survive the media when your reputation has been knocked. What I had to have a plan there for one of my soldiers coming down with Ebola. Whilst I was out there, you'll remember the Scottish nurse came down with Ebola. Well, I was part of the plan to actually extract her from Sierra Leone. So that was part of my plan, chucking it up to the headquarters, going, this is what I was going to do with one of my boys. Can we apply this into taking? And that crisis planning makes all the difference, because you'll never be able to plan for every crisis. But because you've got the nuts and bolts, the ABCs in there, you can rapidly adapt it at the time of a crisis happening to you, so you can protect and maybe enhance your reputation.
Yeah. So you're not just going to plan for the good times and what you're hoping to do, the message you've got to get across. You've got to be able to have, it's a battle plan to actually get you through if anything goes wrong.
Absolutely, because so many things you can say can be misinterpreted. I mean, look at the hassle that Ellen DeGeneres is going through at the moment. She puts up one Photoshop picture of her saying, in humour, that this is the way she wants to do all her tasks now, and she's having a piggyback from Usain Bolt. Yeah, brilliant. Admiring the man being a great sportsman. Yeah. And that's turned into a massive backlash, accusing her of being a racist. Because she's riding on the back of a black man. She suddenly entered a moment of crisis, and she's dealing with it very well, going, no, I'm applauding how fast this man is and what have you. Because, dealing with the media, dealing with advertising marketing, it's risky. Work out what those risks are and see if you can counteract them.
Because an everyday occurrence which normal folk would accept gets blown out of all proportion by those with views, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And this is where social media is that double-edged sword. It's a great way to get your message out there. It's practically free. You can spend a lot of money in getting post promoted and all that sort of stuff. But you're going out to an unfiltered audience, and they can respond as easily as you can communicate. Yeah. And some of the stuff they'll come back with is going to be awful. It's going to be horrible. And then you have to work out, how are you going to deal with the trolls? Are you going to ignore them? Are you going to punch back? I mean, I do recommend having a look at James Blunt's Twitter channel. It's hysterical. The way he deals with his trolls is amazing. And that actually makes his channel, makes it more effective. Yep. But you've got to know, you've got to plan for those negative things as well as you're planning for the positive things. Yep,
totally agree. Now, I mentioned earlier, and I'd like to expand on it because I listened to the interview earlier, your 3 islands. and how they should be. Well, first of all, what they are and how you can use them to communicate.
Right. One of the services I offer is preparing yourself for a broadcast interview.
Okay.
It is not. It terrifies the British, as you would have heard me saying in the podcast. That the two greatest fears of the British public is, number one, public speaking. Number two, death. So people would sooner be in the coffin than deliver the eulogy. How do you end up standing in front of a camera, in front of a journalist, and being able to be coherent and try and get your message across? So the way I present it is, think of 3 messages you want to get across. Think of just 3 things. Don't go more than that because you'll confuse yourself. But just think of the 3 key messages you want to present your audiences, and imagine them as islands floating in front of you, so that when the journalist asks you a question, you acknowledge their question and go, hang on, I can bridge across to Island Charlie over here, and I can start talking. Oh, he's giving me a nice feed to talk about this island over there. And it's a really effective way of managing your own brain so that you're not never directly try and answer the journalist's question, because it will sucker you off in a strange direction. But it keeps your focus to go, I want to achieve this, I want to achieve this, I want to achieve this. And you're working with that professional relationship you're trying to build with the media.
Yeah, so it's a structured approach, and you're actually taking charge, in effect, aren't you?
It goes back to this point that I say, one of my taglines with Micromedia is own the media, be the media. It's supply and demand. We have stories that the media want. That's why you form a professional relationship with them. They're not doing me a favor by suddenly coming on there. We are actually having a professional relationship. So they want a story, I want something out of it, and they will acknowledge this. So if you actually structure the way you're doing it, you're giving them the story you want, but you're still getting the messages out that you want to generate the effect you need. Everybody's happy. Without our stories, the media will not operate. And I guarantee every one of the businesses out there has got a story to tell. It's just, is it a story that channel wants to listen to? And can you actually make it emotional enough for people want to listen into it? Factual stories can be very dry, not very interesting, not very compelling. But if you can bring emotion into it, be a human being, bang, you suddenly got a story.
So you've got to be real. I mean, there's no point in pretending to be somebody else. That's what I'm saying. You can't.
Oh, absolutely. I spent so many years training senior military officers to be human beings rather than the stiff, number one uniform permanently.
Yeah.
It's easy to hate a tank. It's easy to hate a rifle. It's easy to hate a missile. It's very difficult to hate a reasonable, compassionate human being. And that's what people want to see. They also don't want to see that you're over media trained, too confident with it, you've got a day job to do. Why are you spending all your time being this polished on camera? The public don't want to see that. You've got that classic example of this one to YouTube. The Ed Miliband repeats himself. Just put that phrase into YouTube. Okay. And this is where he tries to manipulate the media just to carry 5 sound bites that he had in his head. And it completely destroyed his credibility and his relationship with so many media channels, because he thought that he could override what they were doing.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is that we need training to be natural, don't we?
I would never train somebody to be natural. I train them to go into the point of, you can do this just by being yourself. There are a couple of techniques that you can use that will keep you on focus. And remembering this professional relationship, how you structure your language, think about your islands, what effect you want to have. Once you've got that into your head, I don't care if you've got a Glaswegian accent, if you've got a stutter, if you've got tits and what have you, the public will actually like that, but they want to hear your story. So tell your story.
And we've seen some of that in politics, haven't we?
This is one of the tips I give everybody: don't try and be a politician. Human beings are fallible. Human beings make mistakes. My father told me many years ago, if anybody presents you with a simple answer to a complex problem, they're either a liar, idiot, or a politician. Things aren't simple. If you're presented with a crisis, if you're presented with a challenge, there's no simple answer to it. So be honest about it, because people know that things are complex. They may want a very, very simple answer, but if you give them a simple answer, it's going to come back and bite you that he didn't fix everything in one go. And that's why you watch politicians constantly trying to defend their position after an election, because they said, yes, I'm going to do this, and everything's going to be fine. and there were U-turns, and then there were trip-ups, and it didn't work in that way, because that, they say these simple answers to get votes. Is it going to get the votes in the next election? Well, they don't tend to be. So don't be a politician.
5 years down the road, isn't it? I mean, the wheels came off over Brexit, didn't they?
I found that one of the most amazing things to actually watch. One of the jobs I had at the Defence Media Operations Centre was I used to work out of the Cabinet Office quite a bit. We had a permanent photographer and media operator working within there. And I always found Number 10 an extraordinarily professional place to be. But when we went to Brexit, I've got to say, both sides of the campaign, their communication strategies were absolutely awful. They were purely firing unjustified emotions rather than, and I love communicating with emotion. That gets people in. Yeah. But backing it up with facts as it moves on, going back to Aristotle, the ethos, pathos, and logos, you've got to end up making these layers. But both campaigns, both sides were just firing loads of emotion at everybody.
Yeah.
And that's why it came back to everybody, because they're promising the earth out of emotion. And then where's the actual logic and facts that's going to back it up?
Yeah. Who do you believe?
And that's it. If you just fire pure emotion at people, who is going to believe you? I don't know if you saw that very interesting clip of an Australian politician that's a climate change denier having a chat with Professor Fox, our befamed, lovely chap, astrophysicist, trying to claim that NASA had corrupted all of this data and there was no empirical evidence. And he looked like an absolute buffoon. Professor Cox just looks like the most amusing and logical man in the world, because he's taking emotion and logic, whereas this guy's going, no, I'm entitled to my opinion, and opinion becomes fact.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, we live in a strange world where it's the, I'm going to say this now because I mean it, it's the wacky opinions that get the press.
They grab headlines, and I would never recommend any of my clients to do that, because they're very short term. And it can come back to bite you. You've heard of many cases where people have gone for a job and they've had a look through their Twitter profile, gone back into its deep history, and they start spotting the strange things they've said. As a business, we've got to maintain our reputation, make sure we're got a solid message and keeping it consistent. If you go for those short-term things, suddenly there are blips in your consistency that may be a brilliant idea that night, but actually go back to, does this feed my center of gravity, the way that I need to portray my business to maintain my, and I can't stress this enough, my reputation. Okay. So it's going to take me through to deliver the effects that I want to deliver. If it doesn't, don't post it.
All right. What are the steps that you would take to build a reputation online and in the real world?
In the real world, it's networking. Hence, here we are with the Wiltshire Business Club. It's collaboration. This moment of, yes, once you set up a social media channel, even if you're starting to put stuff into the newspapers, I show people, how you can potentially get newspaper stories covered for you. So why pay for an advert when you can get them to cover a story and that brings you in? It's all about stories again. But it's that collaboration that makes all the difference. Find somebody that's got similar goals to yourself, similar skill sets to yourself. Maybe they're completely opposite, but you can actually start working in harmony to actually go, use the blend of us to generate what you truly want to achieve. There's no way, well, banging the desk. There's no way that I'm going to be able to take amazing photographic imagery for people. I can help them set up their presences, I can set their taglines, I can set their message strategies, but I'd be recommending, say, Barbara, to be the photographer to actually take their imagery to actually brand them against that. So using that collaboration, to me, is one of the best ways you can start marketing yourself and starting building your presence, because they're already following people that are like-minded. So bring them into you.
Yeah. So team.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and get people involved. And that's, I mean, the thing about, because Wiltshire Business Club for a moment, if you want any help and people with expertise in there is there to be taken, isn't it? Because people freely exchange advice.
Yeah, following even just something as simple as following the Twitter list that Roland's put out there. is absolutely fantastic, because you can see what everybody's doing. And myself and Roland had some brilliant conversations about generating stories and histories on Twitter and what have you. And we've ended up with speakers from America jumping into this, and suddenly it's gone from just a very small little conversation to, oh my word, the other side of the pond, they're talking about what the Wiltshire Business Club are talking about. That's reputation. That's fantastic. It
is indeed. Well, it's been a joy chatting. The half hour has just flown by. Now, if you'd like to give a close to the session and thank people and put your message out, whilst you're doing that, I shall post your URL to your website so that people can find you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I am very soon going to be moving into running my first series of courses. The first one will be how to start working with a media approach to communications. I will be putting that up on my Facebook page. I will start putting some links across for it when it happens. And what I'm going to do is my very first one, I'm going to run as a beta course. Therefore, it is not necessarily the entirely polished product, but this will enable me to start establishing the full timelines. It's the way I always ran courses in the military. When it comes to running that beta course, what I'm going to do is I'm going to push it out exclusively to members of the Wiltshire Business Club, and I will be doing it for less than half price of what the alpha course will be, so I can get your feedback and actually work out what's going out there. And please follow my social media channels. Chuck me questions about stories. You know, is this a story? Is that a story? Could I play with this? That's the stuff I love. I love hearing the stories of other businesses, other individuals, and going, do you know what? That's more than just a story. That's a story you can push out there, and that's going to start generating that for you.
Your passion, knowledge has shone through.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming along tonight. And to all our Wiltshire Business Club friends, we hope you enjoyed this and the replay, because we'll be going out on YouTube and on Facebook, and Jay will get a copy, and we'll make this into a story if we can.
Absolutely.
So Jay, thank you, and thank you to everybody who's been watching, and we'll see you again next month on the Wiltshire Business Club interview. Good night, everyone.